Hello and welcome to the Career Instinct podcast with me, Matty Taylor. Join me as I learn how to navigate life and careers in the 21st century. Welcome back to the second and final part of my interview with James Wand. In the previous episode, James took us through his career journey since graduation and the challenges he faced at work. Today, James talks about his love of politics and his experiences as a social sciences student at Cambridge. So looking at your career then, since graduating uni, the one thing that kind of you've stayed true to is your interest in politics and policy. So James, where does your interest in politics start? Where does it stem from?
That's a good question. That is a good question.
It only took me an hour.
What, to think of the question?
To ask a good question.
Oh, you've been asking good questions all day. No,
James.
it is. I think it comes, and I hate to say this, and it's going to sound really vain, but you know, when you're at school, so I think it's a combination of a few things. First of all, at school, everybody likes to be liked, a bit like politicians. Just keep that in your mind.
Wait, everyone likes politicians?
No, everybody likes to be liked in the same way that politicians like being liked.
Okay, understood.
Popularity equals good.
Okay.
But honestly, I was a complete nerd in school, and then I took an interest in like the arts and humanities, and then I didn't even know politics was a subject you could study, and then it was, and I thought it's brilliant.
When did you find out?
Not until I was at secondary school that I knew it was like a standalone subject. And I thought it's going to be really cool, it's going to be great, and I had this sort of really wrong idea that it was going to be a cool thing to do, and obviously I think it's just a bit of a really nerdy thing to do. That's I think where I've been like, that's why I wanted to study politics in a way.
Because you wanted to be cool?
I mean, yeah, because I thought it was cool.
Okay.
And I thought, and also being cool kind of correlates with being like popular and being fun. I don't know. It's a good thing to be cool, isn't it? And if you're cool, right? Everybody likes a cool person. Everybody wants to be cool.
So I'm interested. Were you not cool, and then you wanted to find something that would make you cool, so you found politics, and then did you become cool?
I know it makes me very vain, doesn't it? Because I think I'm going down a little bit of a route that I'm not sure about. It makes it sound like I'm just doing it to get other people sort of
everyone to like me.
I know.
Please like me. I studied politics.
Whenever like you're in the school council and you get your first whiff of power, and then you're suddenly like everybody.
Oh, James, the truth is coming out.
Way, yeah, that sort of way you do want to be popular and cool, don't you? But then I think it's because like if you find something you're really interested in, and you think it's like really unusual sometimes to do, or like you'll be like, yeah, I really like that's going to be like. Not get me street cred. Obviously, studying politics doesn't get.
Well, it gets you out on the streets. You can go out pamphleting and protesting, but
in my head, I probably had all of these far-fetched ideas about being a cool politics student and changing the world.
Yeah, but let's tap into this, okay? Because you say you want to save the world. So, do you think for you, politics is the best vehicle through which you can save the world?
No, I think it's probably about making other people change the world. Me on my own, I can't do any. I mean, I can do lots of good things, like I can recycle all the plastic bags in the world, but me on my own, I'm not going to achieve anything. So I think politics is a really crucial tool by which you can influence other people, and you can say, actually, this is how you can have other people realize that they have the power to change the world too.
So does politics enable you to influence people, or does it enable you to empower people?
I would say that surely they're both the same thing. So you can, if you're just standing there and you're like, I have the power to empower you, people might just ignore you unless you try and influence them, unless you do something to capture their imagination. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, you can try and empower people. There are so many great charities out there, which, for example, like trying to introduce the practice that everybody should give like a percentage of their salary to charity.
Yes, yeah.
Now that's a great way of empowering people to do good. You empower people by giving the resources to make it easy for them, but they, for want of not being very big charities, for want of money, for want of airtime, aren't able to influence the conversation because it's dominated by too many other things, and therefore like they get a bit sidelined. So I think it often goes hand in hand that if you can't influence the debate, you are not going to be able to get your sort of 15 minutes of fame about talking about why your issue is important, and therefore you won't be able to empower people.
Yeah, I see, I see. So then going back to school, I've got a picture of young James at school. You discover
Have you actually?
politics.
Oh no, I thought you had
Oh
actually got a
no.
picture.
Oh no, just in my mind's eye. I've got a picture of you in Nottingham at
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
You found your means to become cool, which is politics.
In my head, anyway.
In
We
your
all know
head.
that it was never cool, but there we go.
I don't know. I think some people can make it cool. James, you're going to make it cool. This is what your legacy can be. But so at school then, did you join like school council? Did you become active in
Oh, of
politics?
course. I mean, of course I did. I mean, you've known me for
I wouldn't
how you've
expect
known me for
anything less.
7 years, 6, 7 years now. Of
Oh,
course I did. And I think maybe that did get me a bit of weird street cred. I don't know. Let's ask the people who had the street cred to give out, like the already cool people.
yeah. What did
Uh,
you think of James Wand and on the school
um,
council?
but yeah, I did. And then I remember I joined a debating competition. It was Debating Matters was the name of the competition. Other, of course, debating competitions are out there.
Yeah.
Um, I remember it was a debate about Scottish independence. Really enjoyed it. It was against another school, a grammar school. Obviously not important, but there's a small piece of pride in the comprehensive, just beating the grammar school. Um, and then we did that debating competition again. Then we got through to the national finals, and I think it was something like quarter
Wow.
finalists. And I know it was really good. It was
Wow.
great fun. The fun was also kind of working in a way. So like doing the speeches, doing the research was a great use of my time because I often get really bored really easily. But also it was opening my eyes up to things like current affairs and those things that make studying so much more easier anyway, and probably gave me the skills and gave me sort of the backdrop and the useless sort of general knowledge that I now have about the world.
Yeah.
I don't think I joined any of the clubs. Unless now you've got some sort of other imaginary picture of me doing some other sort of club-based
I've got
activity.
you in skipping club. That's the one I see you
Skipping,
joining.
skipping.
Skipping
What
club.
was
Yeah.
skipping club?
I'm just like on a skipping rope, skipping up and down.
Oh,
I think you'd be great at skipping
yeah,
club.
yeah. I thought it was something else. I just didn't even know what that was.
Oh no,
No, no,
nothing rude, James. So then another thing that I think will be very interesting to our listeners is that you were the first person from your school, if I am
yeah.
not
Go
incorrect.
on, you're gonna say it, aren't you? This is just embarrassing.
I'm gonna drop the bomb. Um, you were the first student from your school ever in the history of your school to get into Cambridge. I really built that
Or
up.
Oxford. Just throwing that out there.
Or
It was the whole Oxbridge.
okay, let me
Yeah,
do it again. You were the first person ever in the history of your school to get into Oxbridge.
yeah, yeah. But I
Congratulations.
mean, there are lots of caveats to that. Number one being I was not the cleverest by any means. Who I'm pretty sure if they had applied, they would have got in.
But isn't that so?
You know,
Sorry to pause, but isn't that really interesting? And I think this is an important lesson as well, is that there will probably always be people better than you, but it's if you
yeah, of
apply
course there will.
yourself, yeah. So it's like if you apply yourself and if you try, those are the people who are going to get. So you're not going to get
Yeah,
anywhere
I
if you don't
mean, and also
try.
it's like what you're obsessed about. And I think when you're really young, I think it's really easy to learn about competition and be competitive because when you're in class, you are constant sort of competition almost going on
Yeah,
with the people around you.
yeah,
And I think actually, as you go up and you become more mature, and this is something you can take into your career as well, is actually as long as you do your job to a satisfactory level, you're not going to get sacked. Yes, strive to be your best, but you have nobody to answer to except for yourself.
yeah,
And as long as you just sort of apply yourself and make yourself happy and sort of work hard, then you are your best motivation. And, you should strive to make yourself happy. Is
yeah.
that fair? Just give yourself awards.
Yeah, just have the self-confidence to know when you've done a good job.
Easier said than done. Easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, but so to go back, so you've
Mhm.
caveated why you got into Cambridge, which I don't think you need to do at all. But why did you decide to gun for Cambridge? If yeah.
It was very strange. As I remember it, it was an open evening at my sixth form, and the person who is the head of IT, who I knew barely, came up to me and said I went to Oxford and studied. I'm saying Oxford, I can't really remember, and studied MML. so modern and
Okay.
medieval language, and said, you know what, why don't you just apply? You get 5 choices on your UCAS, just go and do it. And so then I spoke to my like politics teacher, and she was like, yeah, why not? So I applied then, and I thought, you know what, you get 5 applications, you're only going to go to one anyway.
Yeah.
Just put it down and see what happens. And I didn't know anything about Cambridge, so I applied on an open application. So for people listeners who don't know, you apply to a college or you can do an open application because Cambridge is made up of sort of lots and lots of colleges. And I just did an open application because I've never been, obviously, so therefore didn't have a strong view about where I ended up, which was very sort of relaxed of me. And so yeah, and then I got invited for an interview, and obviously impressed them with my charm and charisma.
Of course you did. Tell me about your interviews, because like Cambridge interviews are so mysterious. So tell me what was your Cambridge interview like?
So I didn't wear a suit. I wore just chinos and a nice jumper, as I remember. Like I didn't
Yeah.
want to go and wear a suit. I think
But I don't think
it's
you
a bit
should wear a
cliche.
suit.
You should
Yeah.
wear what you're comfortable in because, like,
Yeah.
yes, kind of dress up. I didn't like wear something on the smarter side. So I had the anthropology professor, and I had another man who was a lecturer in I think it was about like revolutions, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was interviewed by somebody who was basically going to be my director of studies. To people who are listening who don't know what a DOS is, director of studies or DOS is essentially somebody who leads your sort of academic path and is your academic go-to person. And like it, there were difficult interviews.
So wait, let's summarize. You had 2 different interviews with 2 different
People, yeah.
people, okay. With 4 different
And there
people. Two
were
different
4 different
interviews with four
people,
different
two sets of
people.
two. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Further maths.
And and don't look at me, I got a B.
I couldn't even do further maths. You're fine.
What was it? So, yeah, so
Sorry.
then I had a really difficult interview, and there's lots of things that I didn't know the answer to.
So let's reenact. So pretend I'm the interviewer. So then I say, Rousseau said X.
Yeah, and I
Discuss.
say, can you give any background to that because I'm not familiar with the quote.
Okay.
Very honest, I just asked the question. I'm sorry. It's better saying rather than saying like I don't know. I'm kind of asking them. It's a bit like when you do a spelling bee, you ask them to say the word in a sentence. It's a bit like
Okay.
that, just trying to weave more information. And actually, like you have to remember, and this is the same for any job interview, it's a two-way conversation. And if you see it more as a conversation rather than like an interrogation,
Yeah.
then like that makes it so much easier for you. You can have that question. You can say, actually, I'm not sure about that. Can you give the background? And let them give the background. And I actually quite enjoyed the conversation. I was knackered after it.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you remember any specific questions that they asked?
I said in my personal statement that a lot of the, not get too philosophical or political, a lot of the sort of politically progressive developments in our society have happened primarily because of the Labour Party. To which one of the questions was, well, can the Conservative Party be progressive? Or because it's conservative, does that in and of itself stop it from being progressive? And you have to remember this was 2013, 14 when I was having my interview. And so we were at the time when that sort of gay marriage had been brought into legislation by David Cameron. And so I had to explain that actually, and my answer was, and I'm not sure there was no right answer to this, but my answer was actually that they can say progressive things that has to be matched by progressive action. So if we take gay marriage, was passed essentially with the support of the Liberal Democrats in a coalition government, and that the philosophical driving force behind the Conservative Party was just, I believe, inherently not progressive. Now, there's probably going to be people listening to this podcast who think I'm completely wrong, and that's fair enough. But that's just an example of one of the questions that they asked. I feel like at the time, looking back on it, I feel like I was bluffing an awful lot.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It takes so much self-confidence to go in there and say, I'm actually, again, it comes down to job interviews as well. Like, I'm good enough to do this job, like, choose me, I'm going to be the standout person. It takes so much sort of effort, like physical drive and like emotional intensity to actually do it. But
yeah.
but
So
yeah.
James, I'm really interested, when you got to Cambridge, how did it compare to your expectations?
But I'd never been before, so that was brilliant because
Nice.
I had no physical expectations.
Yeah.
The people were very much like I kind of expected them to be, because I didn't expect that they'd obviously all be hooray Henrys, as my mum would say. I knew that they'd be I knew that it would be a little bit more representative than that. I mean, obviously, you can't escape the fact that obviously, like, private schools do send more pupils to prestigious universities than state schools do. But having said that, though, everybody was actually really nice, and it was a great place to just immerse yourself in knowledge for the sake of knowledge.
Yeah.
And the resources were second to none. So everything like that, but it was a magical place to be, and
Yeah.
it was a very difficult 3 years, and it was very intense. But if you look at Oxford and Cambridge, they condense their learning into, I think, well, you live there for 10 weeks, but they try and condense it into about 7.5. So your learning is condensed into 21 weeks a year.
Yeah.
It's really takes a mental toll on you.
Yeah, it
And you
does.
can, I think it's improved even since I was there. It's improved, and people are much more aware, I think, of the mental health challenges.
Yeah.
But it's that payoff where the university says, and I think there's some truth in this, but I'm not sure how much, that, to be a prestigious university, we expect a lot, but also acknowledging that that has a disproportionate impact on some people, and there must be the support there to support them. So it's all, I mean, again, this also happens in jobs, like some schools and some university types sometimes lend them to other jobs. So like coming out of Cambridge, and I'm sure coming out of Oxford, you do sometimes find that you're sucked into the civil service jobs sometimes, and you find that you can be quite a good fit because it has a little bit of that environment still. In the same
Yeah.
way that lots of people who become lawyers and become barristers, they attract the same sort of cohort of people. Yeah. Because what I learned was it was amazing fun. Obviously, you could put your mental health front and center, but wouldn't change anything. Wouldn't change anything.
Aww. What do you think was the most difficult thing about Cambridge? Obviously, you've mentioned the mental health side of things.
I see. It wasn't the most expensive, but it wasn't the cheapest university. So I think, as a student, I think you're always aware of money because you weren't allowed a job. Not
Yeah.
that I would necessarily want a job, because whilst you're there, you are worked, and you spend a lot of the time in the library. You don't,
Yeah.
and sort of the student week starts on like a Tuesday for some random reason. Things,
Oh,
nuances like
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
nuances like that make it really difficult to have a job, and but that means you are constantly, I think, thinking about the financial aspect of things. And I think actually it's just the work. You're just constantly, there's a constant feel, not a constant feeling. Hopefully, you sort of grow out of it, I think. There's definitely a feeling that you shouldn't be there, and that it's all too much. You're just going to crumble, and there's this idea that sort of the idea, and it happens, I think, to lots of people at university, that they break you down and then they rebuild you how they want you to be built. And I think there is a little bit of truth in that. You do get battered and bruised about this, the pace of the work and what's expected of you, and sometimes you think, actually, I'm just a bit of an idiot. I've actually just wandered into university and I shouldn't be here. And again, it's the same. It happens with jobs, like when you're starting a new job and you're young. It's really easy to do yourself down and say that you're not worthy of something. But I think if you look, actually, the reason somebody's accepted you is because they want you to be there, or they want you to do a certain thing or provide a certain service, or they agree to a certain thing that you've written. That's the reason that you're there at the table, because people respect your views and they want them. And if you remember that, then you're probably doing much better than lots of people around you.
I think that's really good advice for sure. I think imposter syndrome is definitely a big issue at Cambridge, and I definitely think, and probably like you say, at most universities as well. And I also think that it does really break you down, but it also does rebuild you. And I think a lot of that is to do with the people that you meet as well, because you're in a university with very like-minded people, just striving to kind of, it sounds lame and nerdy, but just like striving to learn as much as they can and just like educate themselves as much as possible. And I think that
Yeah,
really
and
helps.
so many people then go on to do things like masters, either like straight afterwards, or they go on like within a few years to think, actually, I don't want this sort of educational journey to end, which is
Yeah.
really noble. But at the same time, like, some people decide to do work. You meet so many people there with so many different priorities, and it actually opens your mind to different ways of working, different approaches to life, and it challenges you to think, actually, what do I want to do with my life? Do I actually want to stay in academia? Do I actually just want to go out there and get a job? Do I just want to go traveling and explore the world? And
Yeah. So if you could give our audience some top career advice or a lesson that you would want to impart on our listeners.
What would that
My
be, James?
lesson number one would be inner confidence. So we've spoken about this, and I think it's been a theme throughout. It's that you will not always do things which are fashionable, and you may not always work in areas which are sexy, but
Yeah,
have confidence that is what you want to do.
yeah,
And whatever you choose to do it with conviction. So if you choose to go into academia, then you go into academia. If you don't like it, then don't lump it. Find something else to do.
yeah,
So have that inner confidence, and also have that inner confidence to challenge things which you think are wrong in the workplace if you're not having fun. And also harbour your inner confidence for knowing that when do get given a piece of work, and whether you have to do it, and whether it's a good piece of work or a bad piece of work, or whether you like it or not, that you have the inner confidence to know that you're at where you are in that job, or in life. You haven't got their backs, and people do have confidence in you and choosing you for your ability. And obviously, for all the people looking for jobs at the moment who are out of work, obviously have that inner confidence that you do have the skills and you are worthy of it. Because I think sometimes we can be our own worst critic, and we have so much sort of
yes,
self doubt. So that inner confidence is definitely something I hope everybody would have, and I think it's a real good way of, especially tackling low level mental health challenges when you have things like self doubt that can so quite easily spiral. If I'm using the rule of three, which I always taught was the right thing to use, my second piece of advice would be true to yourself, be honest, and if you don't know something, ask questions. There are no prizes in life for not knowing and pretending you do or anything like that. And I've been in many supervision, and I used to ask a silly question because if you don't answer it, you never know the right answer. So be true to yourself, ask questions. And the first last thing is have fun, because you
yeah,
have a life to live and you should have no regrets. I was watching an interview the other day with the actress Jane Fonda. Now, she said, you shouldn't just do your job sort of silently, in the same way that she uses her platform in order to raise awareness of things that she cares about. We should all have fun at work and use it to be fulfilled in whatever way possible. And whether that means that you do work, which means that you have free time, or you do a part-time job that allows you to do something in your free time, or whether you do a job that really satisfies you and makes you happy, whatever it is, if it facilitates you being happy, or if it means that you are happy by doing it directly, just do it.
yeah,
Because, having fun and being happy is undervalued. And
yeah.
there are you're probably going to interview so many more people in this podcast who are probably going to tell you about how many late nights they've done, and how many hours and hours, and how, yes, it was great, but how they were knackered, and that's not a great feeling.
No, it's so true. And I think this segues nicely then into my final question for you, James, which is, what does success mean for you?
I think success is something that only you can find, in the sense that you need to make your own decisions as well and be confident in those,
Oh,
because we have so many influences on our life. We're all influenced by seeing stuff on TV, and we're influenced by parents, what our parents work as, or we're influenced by the privilege that we're born with, or we're influenced by this and that, and views and opinions from society as a whole. And yes, some of those influences are good, but on a whole, you should mix that influence with your own views and making sure that you're true to yourself. So don't allow the views of your employer, who might want to keep you from going on from a new job, to sort of influence too heavily over your decisions. And don't,
yeah,
and I mean, I know that sounds
yeah.
naive, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's a very simple, but probably like a very true thing to try and sort of hold dear.
I don't think it sounds naive. I think one thing that I'd kind of add to that, I think our life is full of influences, and it's about analyzing what those influences are. Like you were saying, for example, if it's coming from your boss, what are their ulterior motives? Like, why are
Mm.
they saying what they are? Or if it's
Mm.
why are you being influenced to become a spy? You recognize it's because you've been watching those, of course, spy movies, but it's having the knowledge to differentiate, like, that's a
Yeah,
movie, it's not my life.
there's also something about the world we're living in now, where if you take something like LinkedIn, it's great at connecting people, but also it's a it's a really good way of everybody showing off about
Yeah.
what they're able to do. And so don't be influenced by your LinkedIn connections. You can have a lower paid job that isn't really going anywhere, but allows you to spend time with your family. And if that makes you happy, and if that is what in your heart and in your head you want to do, then do it. And you can have
Yeah.
a really fast moving job that takes you traveling around the world. And it means you don't really stay in one country for long enough. But if you love jet setting and you like that sort of lifestyle, then go and do that. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're accountable to yourself. And actually there's more to life than just doing something and plodding along, or doing something and just not feeling super happy about it.
Yeah, definitely. No, James, I think that is really, really wise advice. And I think we've covered your whole career. All that is left for me to do is to thank you immensely for being my first guest on the podcast. I'm sure our audience will love to hear this episode. And if the audience has any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me on the Career Instinct podcast, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I will be delighted to get in touch with you, answer any questions. And if you want to be a guest on the show, I will be more than happy to have your sage advice bless our earphones or headphones or whatever device you listen to.
Wonderful. Cue the music, Clary.
Cue the music.